Welcome to the channel. Thank you everybody for tuning in. On today's review, we're going to be looking at the Richard Lee Grand Oceanfarer. Now, Richard Lee Grand is a microbrand fresh out of Singapore. This is the first microbrand being featured on my channel, I think. So it's my first microbrand as well. So let's see what it's all about. Now, seeing as this has been reviewed by some pretty big names on the YouTube circuit, and it's already out there in terms of presence, this review is going to be slightly different. I'll still cover specifications and dimensions, but the majority of the review is going to be my experience on the watch, my overview, and it's going to be a summary throughout. Now, a brief bit of background about Richard Lee Grand. Going on the website was established around 2016. Now, this Oceanfarer, this has been produced already, I'd say twice, because this is the Mark III. Now, I haven't had experience with the Mark 1 and 2, so I can't really speak about them through this video, so I'll just be concentrating on the Mark III. Now, this watch is still available for sale on the Richard Lee Grand website, and it retails for around $389 or £284. But I have seen it being sold as little as £329 or £240 under certain promotions. Now, let's cover some of the specifications. The watch is constructed out of full 316S stainless steel case, bezel, case back and crown included. It's also got a 120 click unidirectional bezel with a coin edge, and it's got a illuminated sapphire bezel insert. You've got a domed sapphire AR coated crystal with 200 meters of water resistance with a screw down crown, and the watch runs a high beat miyota 9039 dateless movement with hack and wind capability. It's a 24 joule movement which beats at 28,800 vibrations per hour, and with a rated accuracy of -10 2 plus 30. You've also got a 42-hour power reserve on the movement, and we'll go over a few more details on the movement just slightly later. Now, you've got a full stainless steel bracelet with solid end links, and a fully articulated small link bracelet with a full milled stainless steel clasp. Now, I did mention that this watch was a Mark III, so it's had a few upgrades. Just to quickly summarize those upgrades, you've got an improved dial with applied indices and chamfered hands. You've also got a 40mm case, and you've had an upgrade to the bracelet, which we'll be looking to detail further on. Now, let's go ahead and look at some case dimensions. You've got a 40mm diameter across the face. You've got a 46mm lug to lug, and you do have a case thickness of 13.3mm approximately. The lug width is around 20mm, and you have an overall weight of 140 grams, which is with the links that I have removed to size my wrist. So the movement. Now, it's a miyota 9039. Now, if you haven't heard of this 9039 movement, it's basically the same as a 9015. There are two main differences between this movement and the 9015. That is, there is no date complication, and the hand stack is shorter than the 9015, making this a slimmer movement. The stated accuracy is -10 to +40, which is still very similar to NH35. So what readings did I get when I put this particular movement on the time grapher? So I measured the watch across the 4 different dial positions, and I noticed its most accurate point was with the dial up when it ran at 0 seconds, and the fastest it ran was +8 seconds with the 6 o'clock up. Now, overall day-to-day average, real life, I found this ran slow, -4.5 seconds a day. The one thing which stayed consistent across this watch, across all the 4 positions, as you can see, the beat error is actually perfect, it's 0. But I would say the amplitude is slightly low. It should be closer to the 300 with ±20 degrees. So now that we've got all that technical bombardment out of the way, where do I stand with this watch? So as I said, this review is going to be slightly different. It's not going to be breaking down all the individual elements. I think this watch has had its fair share of screen time. A lot of big YouTube channels have also covered it. So this is just my 2 pence, me weighing in and giving you an overview about this watch. So positives. What does this watch do very well and very successfully? Now, one of the first things which Richard Lee Grand have done really well with this watch is where it's taken its design inspiration from. Now, clearly you can see that this is a vintage inspired skin diver. You'll see that the vintage skin divers of old had this very similar setup on the dial, and this is what Richard Lee Grand has captured really well. So you've got the numerals 12, 3, 6 and 9, which have been applied to the dial in this slightly off-white color, and you've got this silver polished frame around the outside, and you've got these slim batons that sit between. Now, you can see this type of setup on vintage watches like the Milsub Rolex, the Longines, Heritage Skin Diver, also that vintage Blancpain Aqualung. And also you'll see this on the newer watches, watches like Christopher Ward. They really go for this similar dial setup. Now, where that looks really nice is how they've tied that in with that very slim sapphire bezel insert. You've got the same buttons between the numerals around the dial, and you can see if you just take it just slightly a bit further away, you'll see that visual there. It makes the dial look a bit larger. So this watch has captured, to me anyway, a true essence of a vintage skin diver. Now, what Richard Legrand have also done, they have successfully, I'd say, amalgamated this dive watch with some slightly, dare I say, casual or dressed up features. So effectively, that's what it is. If I were to describe this watch in a sentence, I'd say it's a dressed up vintage skin diver. Subtle features like the text at 12 o'clock, text just above the 6. You'll notice that the font is quite small. You know, you need to move a lot closer, and you tend to find these features on the more formal watches out there. Further to that vintage inspired skin diver, the crown positioned at the 3 o'clock is without crown guards, and you've got some signage on the crown with this almost bead blasted feel right behind the logo. Now, another thing which Richard Legrand have done really well, and what I really appreciate on this watch, is the amount of brushing present. Now, polish finishes and surfaces are very good to look at, but as you'll know, on a daily wearer, they are quite impractical. You'll spend more time cleaning the watch than anything. So I do appreciate the brushing that you've got on the A-face, which is circular brushed. Very fine brushing goes across the lug tips, and then you've got that transition across onto the side of the watch, again linear, very, very fine brushing. Right, so it's not coarse, it doesn't really stand out, but it does give it a smooth, very satin look. Now, while we're on the case, let me draw your attention to just along the flanks here. Now, this is where I believe this Richard Legrand has, I've got to give that a quick clean, has come through with that dressed up dive watch, where you just look at that chamfer along the flank of the case, and it's been highly polished. Now this gives great visual highlights to the case, especially when it's on the wrist and you look at it at certain angles, and when the light hits it, this just really makes this watch shine. So I think with the Richard Legrand, it's a perfect combination of a middle ground between a diver and a slightly more formal piece that you can wear, let's just say, to the office or out on occasions or events. This, I definitely think you can wear this under a suit and you will get compliments all day long. Now, the website mentioned they made a couple of improvements to the dial and the handset used. The handset you can use, as you can see, is a simple candlestick-like hands, and they've stated that they applied these markers to the actual dial. Now, with the hands, I do love the proportions. I think they've got them just right. A lot of the times you'll find dive watches do get the proportions slightly wrong. The minute hand isn't long enough, and neither is the seconds hand. You know, you've got a short hour hand, and the minute hand extends all the way out to the minute track or the chapter ring if you had one. And also the seconds hand, you can see the tip just along the minute track. I mean, it's probably subjective, and it's more of a visual thing, especially when I'm setting the time. I like to see exactly, you know, which marker I'm at, and just helps you set that accuracy. We flip it over, we'll also see some really good machining, great detailing on the case back. You've got a nautical themed case back, simplistic specifications recorded on the back, and you've got this highly polished diver helmet with some, you know, anchors around. You've got this wave pattern, so great stamping, great engraving. Overall, it looks like a very well machined case back. Now, while we are also on the topic of the dial, I think this is where this watch has its biggest failing. Yes, visually looks nice, pleasing aesthetics, you know, very period correct, let's say. However, I think the application of these hour markers has just affected the lume on the watch. It's made it actually ineffective, because you'll see they are quite thin, which leaves there's not a lot of room to actually apply that lume. And I think there's probably two problems here. I don't think there's been enough layers of the lume applied, and secondly, I don't think there's enough surface area. When we do go to the lume shot, you'll know exactly what I mean. Also, the sapphire bezel insert, yes, it is illuminated, but again, it's just too dull, rendering it slightly ineffective. So I'd say it is a critical drawback with this watch, because the main thing about this watch is when you look at it, A-face, and I think the indices are just slightly too thin for me. I would like them just to be a touch bigger, so you could apply that lume just a bit more, and it just gives you a bit more of a presence. Now on camera this dial looks like a glossy black, but it actually isn't. It's more of a satiny matte type of dial, but it is a very plain dial indeed. Now there's an option on the Richard Lee Grand website to have one with the black and blue gradient, sort of looking like a midnight style dial. If I could buy this again, then I would definitely go for that, just to make the dial a bit more interesting. Now here's the lume shot, and you'll see what I mean exactly when you look at it. It's just too dull. Now I've got a great way of indicating if the lume on a watch is strong enough, basically just by the LED lights in the room and how well it picks it up. Now the majority of my watches do have awesome lume as soon as I turn the light off. Now with this Richard Lee Grand, you can see the camera can't even focus because the light isn't bright enough. The light around the bezel insert is a bit poor, very dull, and also you got the same dull application on the minute and hour hand and the seconds hand. You do have a bit of brighter lume on the numerals 12, 3, 6 and 9, but unfortunately it just isn't effective enough. So now I'm going to blast it with some UV rays, and in hopes to just get that lume to shine through, because if it was done right, the watch actually does light up really well and it looks really good to look at. Now you can see the difference. Still the bezel lume is quite a bit dull, but in comparison, like for example the Proxima, when they do the sapphire bezels, they shine very, very bright. And now the dial is a bit better, you know, you can look at it a lot more. But yeah, that's something which Richard Lee Grand should have really focused on a lot more. So, you know, all in all, everything else is really good on the watch. And my biggest problem was, as I've stated, it's just the dial here. Now, because that's the main thing that you look at, it is quite disappointing once you get over that initial first impression, that initial look at it. I said, you know, when I put it further away, watch does look very beautiful indeed. And the fact that it's so versatile is definitely a bonus. But I just feel they should have tried a bit harder on the dial, especially if they've stated it as an upgrade. Now there is also another little issue present on the dial. I'll have to put up a picture on the right hand side of the screen because I've had to take a microscopic shot to show this. But at that 2, just on the 12, there's a bit of extra flash between just how the 2 curves around. Now for me that's just poor finishing. I don't think it's meant to be there, nor should it be there. It should be clear and crisp number 2. Let's have a look at the bezel and let's have a listen to the bezel. So it's a 120 click bezel. And it's quite a clicky bezel, you know, you got strong positive clicks. And it lines up perfectly, no back play, no lateral play, no horizontal play. You know, it's been fitted on well, coin edge design, good grip as well. Let's give you some ASMR bezel action. Now, Richard Lee Grand also stated they made another upgrade. Now, the other upgrade they made was to the actual bracelet end link. Now, we're going to move on to the bracelet because that is, I'd say, the final main feature of this watch, which makes it stand out and makes it really attractive. So with the end link, I think the previous one had a male end link, which some people found uncomfortable. So with this one, now you now have a female end link, which allows for this to be fully articulated. And just with the bracelet having these such small links, it gives you that full articulation on the bracelet. Now, not only that, this is where you get that dressed up feature on this watch, is you've got just flat, very flat links with that straight brushing. Gives you some awesome reflection, some great light play. You can just see how that shimmers. Just have a look at that. It is one of the most aesthetically pleasing bracelets that I've seen on a dive watch especially, and you would tend to find something like this on a more formal or more dressed up watch, no doubt. Got this obviously really nice milled clasp. We see this clasp on watches like San Martin, and now I think looking at all the comments from all the subscribers and even myself, this is generally the preferred type of clasp that you want on most watches. Good positive click, got a flip lock with the Richard Lee Grand logo. Good brushing on the actual clasp. 6 micro adjusts. I feel the 6 micro adjusts are just a bit excessive. It adds a little too much length to the clasp, but that is very dependent on the size of your wrist. So that being said, let's put this on the actual wrist. What am I wearing today? I'm wearing the San Martin Sumo Homage, and yes, it does look stunning. And this is my latest pickup, and I'm just getting my Ritz out of that. But yeah, with the Richard Legrand, now this is where you are going to see the watch shine. Now, successfully, what they have done is they've got 2 out of the 3 upgrades right. I'd say the dial upgrade, I don't really see the upgrade. I think they could have improved. I've already said that. They also made, I think, the case diameter a little bit smaller to 40mm. Now, that is another thing which this watch has, and it's absolutely perfect for the smaller wrist, and even guys with a bigger wrist. The dimensions on this are just so good. I mean, I don't really mind having 40mm diameter watch cases. I know there's a bit of a hunger for the 38mm, bit of a preference out there. However, with that 46mm lug to lug, that's the measurement that you're interested in. It fits so well on the wrist, so well. And you know, you do catch yourself admiring this bracelet, you know, as you wear it throughout the day, and just look at that light play everywhere you are. If you can see your bracelet, you'll see it just shimmer away, and with that highlights along the lugs, I think it is a beautiful watch indeed. As I mentioned with the clasp, I feel it's a bit long, as it takes up quite a lot of surface area on a smaller wrist, and I think it could have done with just having maybe 4 micro adjusts, not the whole 6. But anyway, you know, it's a well-liked clasp. It's the preference out there at the moment. And now, my personal experience on this watch, it looks better on the wrist. It looks better just a slight distance away from your eyes. If you look too close at it, you know, the dial, and you look at the hands just individually, I did look at it quite close, and I wasn't overly impressed. But I think overall, how the watch presents itself makes it really shine, you know, with the features like the bracelet, the case, etc. Overall, it works. Like I said, individually, if you look too close, you know, you're not going to be very, I'd say, overly impressed. There's one nice little thing here. They can notice that, you know, even at extreme angles, you've got pretty good visibility of that dial. You've got a very good fit and finish of the dome sapphire crystal as well. So they've done a lot of things really, really well. So that's me done. I hope you guys found this review useful. I hope you found this overview informative, and I will see you. And I really enjoyed making this review. I liked talking about this watch. I enjoyed having it, enjoyed wearing it. And this is going to stick around in my collection for at least a few more months before I decide to move it on. So thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.